temples, gods, rituals, and so on. Western scholars used to categorize Daoism into two modes, philosophical and religious Daoism, and equated these two categories with two Chinese terms found in Taoist texts, Daojia for Taoist philosophy and Daojiao for Taoist religion. But this distinction is increasingly viewed as inaccurate. Part of the reason is because Taoist texts themselves make no such distinction. Daojiao directly translates to Taoist teachings rather than Taoist religion, while Daojia to Taoist family or lineage rather than Taoist philosophy. Taoists used both terms interchangeably to refer to the same thing, and the separation between the two is only useful insofar as it translates the Taoist tradition into a more familiar Western framework of religion. To account for a more nuanced understanding of Taoism, some scholars propose alternative models such as mystical versus liturgical Taoism. Others avoid the distinction entirely by throwing in a sneaky hyphen and calling it a philosophic spiritual tradition. The scholar Gil Raz summarizes it well when he says, Taoism is not a clearly definable religion. We should consider the Taoist religion not as a unitary phenomenon, but as an assemblage of intersecting textual and ritual lineages, centered on core concepts like the Tao. Rather than drawing a sharp line between philosophical and religious Taoism, we can more accurately identify specific Taoist movements as organized Taoisms. Taoist movements are communities with a more systematized set of beliefs, practices, and shared identities. While there are many we can cover, we'll focus on the two main organized Taoist movements today, Tianshi Dao and Quanzhen Dao. Let's start with the former Tianshi Dao, or the Way of the Celestial Masters, also called Orthodox Unity Taoism. This tradition began in 142 BCE, when a healer and religious leader named Zhang Daoling, while living in isolation on Crane Call Mountain, had a vision of Lord Lao, the deified Lao Tzu. Lord Lao gave to him the Tao of Orthodox Unity and appointed him the first Celestial Master. Zhang Daoling went on to found the Way of the Celestial Masters, gathering tens of thousands of people into the first communal Taoist organization that started to look more like the Western understanding of an organized religion. The movement had specific gods, texts, officials, and ethics, all founded upon the teachings of the Tao. The Tao Te Ching functioned like a holy book and was recited for devotional and magical purposes. They worshipped gods like Lord Lao as manifestations of the Tao, and they eventually instituted leadership ranks and organized into 24 administrative regions in China, kind of like parishes in Catholicism. Many scholars even say it functioned like a Taoist theocracy, a Taoocracy if you will, a semi-independent state with a form of taxation, a ritual calendar, and a moral code for all members to follow. Orthodox Unity Taoism is still around today as a community-based priesthood. Taoist priests ordained in this tradition trace their lineage back to Zhang Daoling as the first celestial master, and they conduct a variety of communal rituals for their communities at local temples. There are plenty of other examples of organized Taoisms that I could mention, but we'll briefly cover the other main branch of Taoism today, Quanzhen Dao, which we can translate as complete reality or complete perfection Taoism. This is the major monastic form of Taoism today and was founded in the 12th century CE by the philosopher and teacher Wang Zhi. Quanzhen Taoism originated as an austere ascetic movement. Wang Zhi taught his disciples to abstain from the so-called four hindrances: alcohol, sex, wealth, and anger. At first, it was a movement of hermit monks living in near isolation, but by the year 1300, it evolved into a communal monastic movement, with thousands of monasteries around China and tens of thousands of monastics, both monks and nuns. It was also a mystical tradition, as Quanzhen monks and nuns developed complicated meditative and alchemical practices that we'll explore in the next section. Today, the White Cloud Monastery, or Bayunguan, located in Beijing, is the headquarters for a branch of Quanzhen Taoism called Dragon Gate Taoism. The White Cloud Monastery is also the headquarters of the China Taoist Association, the Chinese government's official supervisory body for Taoism. Along with the rise of these more organized, systematized Taoisms, we also see an effort to delineate an official Taoist canon of texts, which took shape in 1445 under the Ming Dynasty. The Taoist canon is huge, way bigger than the Bible or the Quran. It consists of around 1,500 different texts and fills 36 volumes. The genres in it range from hagiographies and liturgies to pharmacological and alchemical texts about making drugs and elixirs. Only a tiny fraction has been translated into English, and in fact, according to the scholar James Miller, there are probably many more texts we don't even know about because they were passed down over the centuries in secret. Turning now to the pantheon of Taoist gods. Now, it'd be difficult to list all of the gods in the Taoist tradition in one video, because many are shared with folk religion and they differ according to time and location. But the most important gods in the Taoist pantheon are the three pure ones, also known as the three clarities or Sanqing, which some scholars call the Taoist Trinity. First, there is Lord of Primordial Beginning, also called Jade Purity, who is considered the creator of heaven and earth and the personification of the Tao. Then there is Lord of the Numinous Treasure, the deity responsible for spreading the knowledge of the Tao, marking the passage of time, and sacred books. Then there's Lord of the Way and its virtue, the deified Lao Tzu and the mythological teacher of the Tao who had existed even before the universe came into being. He occupies the lowest position of the Sanqing Trinity. These three gods have been worshipped together since the 9th century CE and are typically depicted as old men. Other important deities include Yu Huang, the Jade Emperor, who occupies the highest position in popular religion and was incorporated into the Taoist pantheon during the Song dynasty. Also there's Si Wangmu, or Queen Mother of the West, the ancient mother of immortals and sometimes considered the mother of the Jade Emperor. Then there's Matsu, a goddess popular in coastal regions who protects sailors and fishermen. She is the deification of a woman named Lin Mo, who is said to have been born during the Song dynasty in the 10th century, and who is said to have saved her brother and father during a typhoon with her spiritual powers. Now, there are many more gods that we could mention, but it's important to emphasize that many of these gods are not necessarily Taoist gods in any exclusive sense. One of Taoism's defining characteristics is its adaptability and relatively non-exclusive attitude toward other spiritual traditions. As the scholar James Miller says, all religions in China have traditionally functioned in relation to a common substrate of popular religion. This includes the Chinese calendar, traditional Chinese festivals, and ancestor veneration. At the same time, however, Taoists have historically held contradictory attitudes toward Chinese folk religion, sometimes incorporating certain practices and gods into its pantheon, while other times prohibiting cults to minor deities and attempting to educate the masses into venerating gods that personify the Tao. So sometimes the relationship between Taoism and Chinese folk religion was antagonistic and sometimes symbiotic. Much of Taoism is not so systematized as the two main branches today, though. Throughout history, people have engaged in more individualized practices that we can call Taoist self-cultivation techniques. These are practices that are thought to align oneself more in harmony with the Tao, balance internal energies, promote health, and even help to attain longer life or immortality. As with the Taoist pantheon, self-cultivation techniques are not necessarily exclusive to Taoism. For example, many of these techniques draw from the vast and complex world of Chinese folk medicine, but we can categorize Taoist self-cultivation into three types: meditation, alchemy, and practices called Yangshen, translated as nourishing life. Nourishing life encompasses a bunch of different practices that aim to benefit the body. This includes Qigong, which is a set of physical practices involving slow-flowing bodily movements, rhythmic breathing, and a meditative state of mind. This physical practice is thought to cultivate and rebalance the vital force in the body called Qi. Qigong is closely related to Tai Chi, a Chinese martial art that encourages the Qi to circulate freely through the body. According to Taoist thought, Qi must flow unobstructed and remain in balance for people to reach an optimal state of health and well-being. Taoist temples today will even sponsor Qigong sessions, during which participants can practice the techniques together. Nourishing life also encompasses different breathing and healing techniques, dietary guidance, as well as sexual practices, generally aimed at healing the body, extending your life, or promoting overall well-being. Taoist meditation is an equally vast body of traditions that we can only briefly summarize here, but all forms of meditation generally are viewed as methods for balancing energies in the body and aligning oneself to the Tao. On one level, Taoist meditation can simply involve concentration, focusing your attention on a single object, sound, entity, or your breath. But there are more complicated forms of Taoist meditation that can involve inner journeys, where you visualize gods or energies inside your body, or external journeys, what we can call ecstatic excursions or shamanic soul travel. This involves the meditator traveling to the cosmos, visiting constellations like the Big Dipper or the sun and moon. The last form of Taoist self-cultivation that we'll explore here is alchemy, which encompasses a range of different physical, meditative, ritual, and ecstatic practices for achieving immortality and union with the Tao. We can divide Taoist alchemy into two forms: external and internal alchemy. External alchemy, or Waidan, involves the manipulation of natural substances, such as creating, ingesting, or carrying elixirs that confer transcendence and immortality, as well as protection from evil spirits and the ability to summon benevolent gods. Internal alchemy, or Neidan, involves meditative techniques that aim to refine the body's energies and transform your inner self. It's called a form of alchemy because it's believed that through these practices you can actually change your form and substance, transforming yourself into a transcendent or immortal being. Let's turn now to the modern situation of Daoism here in the 21st century. You might be wondering, how many Taoists are there today? Well, this is kind of the wrong question to ask. When it comes to sociologists trying to measure religious affiliation, things get very complicated very quickly with Chinese religion. As one study says, in China, folk religion and institutional religions are not discrete, but overlap and interweave with each other. And although the Chinese government recognizes Taoism as one of the official religions in the country, asking a question like, "What is your religion?" on a survey will not get you an accurate snapshot of Taoist practitioners, especially because many Chinese people would interpret that question as asking if you yourself are a Taoist priest or monastic. But sociologists have tried anyway. In 2020, the World Religion Database estimated that there were almost 6 million Taoists in mainland China and 3 million in Taiwan. But these are people officially affiliated with Taoist organizations. Taoist practice is diffused throughout Chinese culture. When you expand that search to people who practice Taoist-inspired rituals or hold to beliefs inspired by Taoism without actually identifying as a Taoist themselves, that number explodes to 439 million people in mainland China and 10 million in Taiwan. Scholars call these people wider Taoists or even use more clunky terms like believers of diffused Taoism. As for Taoist priests and monks, we don't know how many there are, and the sources I read for this video offered very different figures. Low estimates say there are around 25,000 Taoist monks and priests in China alone. High estimates say it's around 48,000, but no one knows for sure. Taoism has gone global as well, especially via immigrants from Taiwan, Hong Kong, and mainland China, teaching Taoist-inspired body cultivation techniques to foreign audiences. The Chinese Taoist martial artist Da Liu became a minor celebrity in the 1960s teaching Tai Chi in New York City. In the 1970s, the Taoist monk Mo Lin-shin moved to Toronto and founded the Taoist Tai Chi Society, which still operates today. And Taoist thought made its way into a bunch of different pop philosophy books in the later 20th century, which has led to all sorts of debates in the academy about whether or not we can call any of this authentic Taoism. Some scholars even differentiate between self-described Taoist adherents and so-called Taoist sympathizers, people who don't affiliate, don't call themselves Taoist, but who might practice Taoist-inspired meditation or something like Tai Chi. The scholar Elijah Siegler even defined American Taoism as a new religious movement that emerged in the 70s and 80s, which continues Taoism's long tradition of defying easy definition, a tradition marked more by constant transformation than rigid categorization, as it twists, turns, and branches off in countless different directions over its 2,500-year-long history. Thanks to Wondrium for sponsoring this video. Wondrium is an online learning platform with a ton of educational video content. This includes documentaries, do-it-yourself tutorials, and lecture series that are basically as long as a university course. Wondrium's